John joins us now. And John, please help me out here because we're in Los Angeles and we're kind of still in the, I guess, the morning stages of what happened with the Dodgers. And now we're thinking, could this possibly happen to the Astros tonight against the Rays?
Well, Kirk, good morning. Good afternoon on the East Coast. It's a great question. We saw two teams both lose on home field yesterday, and certainly there is that pressure that comes with playing at home in a decisive winner-take-all game. That's very real, and I believe is a factor for the Astros to reckon with today. They have not played well on the offensive side of the baseball the last three games. They've scored 7 runs in the last 3 games. In many ways, they're lucky that they're still alive in this series because they nearly let Game 2 slip away. And if that had happened, who knows? Maybe they would already be getting ready for the offseason if that was the case for the Houston Astros. So they've got to find a way to get the top of the lineup going again. Springer and Brantley, I believe, are the two biggest names to watch tonight from Houston to see if they get some traffic on the bases for the big bats in the middle part of the lineup. But the Astros have their ace, whether you want to call him 1A, 1A, 1B, depending how you look at Colin Verlander. They've got the right guy on the mound. They're also facing someone in Tyler Glasnow, who I thought was very good in the first game of this series, and now they've got to deal with him once again. So it should be two dynamic right arms. You're going to see power stuff on the FS1 broadcast tonight beginning at 7 o'clock Eastern. I can't wait to see how it all plays out. It's going to be a desperate game on both sides, with certainly Houston having a lot more to lose. They're the team that's expected to win. They've got the most wins in baseball this year. They're supposed to win this baseball game. But as we saw yesterday, what is supposed to happen is not always what does happen.
MLB Network and Fox Sports MLB analyst John Morosi joining the Rich Eisen Show. Kirk Morrison here filling in for Rich. So you mentioned it as Cole versus Glasnow, but when you look at right now in a Game 5 scenario, you mentioned Verlander as well, but when you look at both of these, I guess, relief pitching right now, the relievers in this game, who do you think has the edge if one of these starters gets touched up early on?
Tampa Bay, because that is their DNA. That is how they have run games all season long. I think however long we see Glasnow go, whether it's Diego Castillo or Nick Anderson, who got into a game very early in Game 4, the earliest he's ever been involved in a game was that Game 4. They've got Emilio Pagan, Colin Poche. We could see Blake Snell come out of the bullpen. We could even see Charlie Morton, the former Astro, the Cy Young candidate for the Rays, pitching in relief today. They have the much better setup once the starter leaves the game than Houston does right now. Houston has had some struggling bullpen issues here of late when you think about Ryan Presley still coming back from a knee issue. Roberto Osuna had to be rescued there in the second game of this series. So if the game is tied, or even if the Rays, if it's the 7th inning and Cole is out of the game and the Rays are down a run, they'll like their chances. Whatever the win probability says, Tampa Bay is going to like their chances to win the ball game if they're within a run or if they are tied or ahead, certainly, in the 7th inning or later if Garrett Cole's out of the baseball game.
John Morosi, MLB Network and Fox Sports MLB analyst, joining the Rich Eisen Show. But, you know, John, I know we have Game 5 tonight in the ALDS, but when you look at last night's NLDS, the two games between obviously the Cardinals and the Braves, and obviously the Dodgers going against the Nationals, and I'll start with the Cardinals and Braves just a little bit. Just kind of what happened, how it unraveled so fast, and were you expecting more from this Braves team that just didn't really show up yesterday?
I was expecting more. I think Mike Foltynewicz maybe just got a little too amped up in that situation. Sometimes when that happens, you just don't have the command that you usually do. And I think that was part of the issue yesterday. Obviously, a very fluky error, and that from that standpoint too played a role early in that ball game as well. So it was a combination of factors from Atlanta's side of things, and obviously good hitting, good timing on the part of the Cardinals. A 10-run first inning is not something that we ever expect to see, and no matter how erratic a pitcher is, and I think that was an aberration of aberrations. The only time ever we've seen it in the postseason history having that happen in the first inning. So it was a very surprising result. But at the end of the day, Kirk, I would tell you that from my perspective, the Braves lost this series in Game 1.
Wow.
With the base running mistake by Ronald Acuna Jr., not running a ball out, a ball off the wall. He only got to first base on it. And as Brian McCann said after the game, 90 feet in the playoff game is a big deal. And that was a significant problem for the Braves in that game. And unfortunately for Acuna, a sterling season. He's one of the great stars in the game. He's going to have a great career. But when there is a fault of a lack of effort in a stage that big that costs your team and you're the franchise player, that is a very, very difficult burden to bear from now until whenever the Braves can advance in the playoffs. That's going to be part of his biography until he can find a way to erase it and win. So that's numerous players, Brian McCann, Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies, after that game, criticized their teammate on the record and said that shouldn't happen. So clearly there's a level of frustration there with a player who has the potential and the ability to change a game. It was a bad look in Game 1, and as much as people might want to say, well, the Braves, what an embarrassing way to lose Game 5 with that 10-run first inning, I think in many ways the more difficult moment for them to have to reckon with is what happened in Game 1.
You mentioned it, a younger player in Acuna Jr. having to kind of go through the growing pains of Major League Baseball and understanding that the playoffs are a little bit different, and he's going to live with that one for a while. Maybe he can change kind of the perception of what happened in this NLDS, but I'll shift to the other game, and we're talking about a guy who has been in this league for a long time and has pitched many great games, but when it comes to the playoffs, it's been Clayton Kershaw's kryptonite. And last night we saw it again, giving up the back-to-back home runs after, basically, getting out of the seventh inning. But when you watched last night's game, though, John, what did you see from the Dodgers that they could have done differently? And I hate to say that, but who's more at fault here? Is it Kershaw, the way he pitched, or is it his manager, Dave Roberts, for leaving him in there?
There's a lot of blame right now, Kirk, to go around with the Dodgers. I think it's shared among multiple parties here. I do not believe Dave Roberts put Kershaw in a situation to succeed. But also, from Clayton's standpoint, giving up home runs on consecutive pitches would, to me, indicate that there was a flaw in the game plan. And from his perspective, I think Sean Casey made a very good point on MLB Network last night. The pitch to Rendon is forgivable. That was down, and one of the best hitters in the game got it out of the ballpark. I don't have a big issue with Kershaw giving up that home run. It did not tie the game at that point in time. It was to a righty. The pitch was relatively well located. I can live with that one. But that the cutter up that Soto hit out, that has to be located better. That was right in the hitting zone. The very next pitch, it was up, it was over the plate, and for Dave Roberts, you put Kershaw in there to get Soto out. You have got to get that hitter out. That is the guy that Kershaw was still in the game to get, because if he wasn't going to have success against Soto, then Roberts should have put in Maeda to deal with Rendon and then live with the possibility of Soto doing damage against Maeda. But that was the guy that Kershaw had to get out. Obviously, it didn't happen. Kershaw, I thought, was very accountable after the game and speaking about the criticism that he's getting right now. And he said, everything that's being said, I deserve it. He took the loss on his own shoulders. There is never an issue of accountability with Clayton Kershaw. But the reality is the Dodgers were somewhat disorganized in their bullpen late in the season. Kenley Jansen, Dave Roberts said late in the year, supposedly was their closer in the division series. But he pitched twice, once with the team up by 6 and once when they were down by 4. That does not sound like the way that you use a closer. And so there was a disconnect between internal, external, what was going on there. How do you now handle Joe Kelly? How do you handle Kenley Jansen in the offseason? Oh, by the way, probably your most consistent starter, at least through the first half, was Hyun-Jin Ryu. He's a free agent now. Rich Hill's a free agent now. How confident are you with a Buehler-led staff that also includes Kershaw maybe fading a bit, Maeda, and then some youth, Urias or Gonsolin? Is that your starting 5 for next year? Do you have to bring back Ryu? There's a lot of questions right now for the Dodgers. It'd be a lot easier for them to take if they had won a couple of years ago when they had probably a better chance to do it against the Astros, and Kershaw let Game 5 of that series get away. So I think we sometimes look at the last result and really judge a lot on it. I think in this case there is something to be judged from it, but also the larger picture here. I believe, Kirk, the Dodgers at different times were very cautious at the trade deadline. They did not get Justin Verlander when they probably should have. This year at the deadline, they did not make a big move for a reliever. And I think the passive nature of their deadlines, Kirk, has now come back to haunt the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Oh, man, just a couple more minutes here with MLB Network and Fox Sports MLB analyst John Morosi. John, so are you saying that the Dodgers dynasty or their little run is probably on its downswing, or could it possibly still be on an upward trajectory?
That's a great question, Kirk. I think that they still have the players to be a sustainable winning ball club. They've got, when you think about the Will Smith coming up this year, Gavin Lux coming up this year, I mentioned Gonsolin, Urias is still a relatively young pitcher. They've had a lot of contributions. Matt Beatty is one more name. Garlick had a big contribution this year as well at different times. The number of players debuting on this team for a team of this caliber was extraordinary for the Dodgers this year. However, when you see what's happened now in the playoffs, you see how competitive now the National League is. And the Nationals will be back next year. They'll be good. I expect other teams to take a step forward. The separation between the Dodgers and everybody else is narrower now than it's been in a while. We saw that happen in this series. And I really think, Kirk, that so much of baseball now is a matter of syncing up your biggest moves with your best windows to win. The Astros, we're speaking here in Houston, they did that 2 years ago with the Verlander trade. Obviously, it was unique circumstances in August, and they were able to make the trade happen. But so much of baseball, the Royals in 2015, they made a big move to Johnny Cueto and Ben Zobrist, and they gave up some prospects, and they're going through rebuild now. But, hey, they always say the flag flies forever. The Dodgers still need a flag to fly, okay? We can't call them a dynasty without a championship. And I think that in some ways, Kirk, the core of that team, its best chances to win may well have now passed them by, and we're about to see, do the Dodgers react emotionally and sign a Garrett Cole, for example, or an Anthony Rendon and move some pieces around the diamond? How aggressive are they going to be, or will they maintain their current course of caution and sustainable winning, but obviously so far not winning the ultimate prize?
Hey, John, last question before I let you go. Right now, currently 8 teams will be looking for new managers next year in baseball. Gabe Kapler just being let go by the Philadelphia Phillies. Could the Dodgers also be in that situation? Or how do you think, first of all, the Phillies feel their role? But then out here in California, Joe Maddon is kind of walking around here and definitely probably a hot commodity right now this offseason.
He is a very hot commodity, Kirk. I think Joe Maddon will be the next manager of the Angels. I do. That they still have some more interviews to go. Reportedly this week, John Farrell, Buck Showalter. Interesting that now it seems very in vogue for teams that are trying to win. They now want experienced managers again. For a while, they were moving away from that. Younger managers, Aaron Boone, Alex Cora, managers who had not yet managed at the major league level. Andy Green, who was fired in San Diego, Gabe Kapler in Philadelphia. So I think now we're seeing experience matter a little bit more, and that to me is going to be the flavor of this offseason. I think Buck Showalter's got a good chance to get a job. Joe Girardi, I would be stunned, Kirk, if Joe Girardi is not managing somebody, probably either the Mets or the Phillies or the Cubs, in the next couple of weeks. I think he's that strong of a candidate. Dave Roberts is safe, in my judgment. I can't imagine there's any threat to his job right now. The Dodgers have a very collaborative approach to their in-game decision making, and I think that was part of the game plan yesterday. Dave Roberts has won the most games in baseball since he took over. I can't imagine any change happening there, but I do expect, again, Joe Maddon probably will get a job there with the Angels. I think a very high probability there, and then now on the East Coast, the Phillies, I believe, much like the Mets, I would expect to hire someone with experience. That's a key part of what's needed right now in the game, and I think the Phillies will go in that direction with both Buck Showalter and potentially, how about this, Dusty Baker.
Yeah.
Dusty managed Bryce Harper in D.C., one of the great classy people we've seen in the game for the entirety of his career.
Right.
Personally, I've wanted to see Dusty get one more chance at this, and I think the Phillies, he's always managed star-laden teams very well, Kirk, because of his personality. He relates so well to everybody. I think Dusty Baker in Philadelphia would be a fantastic fit.
Well, you keep using the word experience, and That's why we go to you for our MLB news, John, because have nothing but experience. So, hey, I know you got to work. I know you got a long day ahead of you.
I appreciate it, Kirk. I appreciate it, Kirk. I always enjoy our conversations going way back years ago. You've been a great friend and always enjoy being on the show with you. You do a fantastic job hosting, analyst, everything you do, Kirk. So great to talk with you today. Thanks.
I learned from you, John. Such a great treasure you are to Major
Thanks,
League
my
Baseball.
friend. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, have fun tonight. Thanks, John. That's John Morosi, MLB Network and Fox Sports MLB analyst.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.